This is the fourth video on learning the language of music. We first of all started off with working on the Bach Prelude number 1 from the Well-Tempered Clavier. And in that we had a one tonic to a supertonic to a dominant back to the tonic. A basic 1-2-5-1 progression. And from that we can do a lot with it that is different than what Bach did, even though we use his progressions. 1, 2, 5, 1. Completely different, of course. 1-2-5-1. This is important to do this because you first of all work from here, then you work from, and that's all part of the C major triad. Then you work from here, from here. It's all explained in the in that particular post. So this needs to be worked on. There's no such thing as doing something that I've presented once and thinking, oh, I've done that, so you don't have to do it again. This is something you should continue to do. Get the idea of it, then do your own thing based upon what I've given you. All right, 1-2-5-1. 1, 2. Now there's the third, the root, again the third, and the seventh, and then the 1, 5, 1. Then doing it in different keys. F. 2, 5, 1. 1, 2, 5, 1. In a different key, G. 2, 2. Now that I've got the D F sharp A, I changed the identity of it by keeping this. And notice what an interesting sound that is. Let's put it here. 1, 2, 3, 4. But we can call that the 11th. So this is a supertonic, dominant, 11 on the bottom. Some people call it the pedal point. Well, the 11th then is the pedal. Anyway, enough of that. Now, this video explains a little bit more about how to get from one place to another place. All right, let's take A. How do you get to B? You'd say that's a sort of a silly question. Well, yeah, sort of. But nonetheless, you can go direct, A to B. What else can you do? You can go to a chromatic tone to B. How else can you do it? There's this chromatic tone above it, but that's a scale tone also. So chromatic below B and the chromatic above B. In another situation, that would be a chromatic in any case. But this one, to go to D. Chromatic to D. And then again, a chromatic to D. So it depends upon whether it's chromatic or whether it's a scale tone. And I think you can see that. Now, when I say scale tone, I mean within the scale that you're working in. Now, in your piece, the Fly Me to the Moon, you're starting on A. Well, you know, to get from one place to another, you go around the key circle, for example, A, D, G, C. But notice you're going back and forth and back and forth. Well, how can you get from A to D? Well, the chromatic tone just above it or the chromatic tone just below it, or outline it and then back to it, or so either this way or you see there's a number of different ways you can do it, and that's not even covering the whole thing. Like for instance, let's see, that's a rather interesting little progression. I'm going from the root A minor I'm creating some interest down here, which is just based upon that same principle of chromatic tones or scale tones, or you can probably name it yourself. How about that? You have to experiment. You have to search. You have to think, how do we do this to get what I'm after, the kind of sound that I'm after? The same thing in the right hand. All right? Well, there's many little twists and turns that make it interesting. But to do this, even though it sounds nice, it's perfectly acceptable, but it lacks that motion that could be instilled into this particular phrase here, this particular section. So if we have this, by the way, I want to point out that the first note of each chord in each measure is the third. This is the minor third above A. That's the minor third above D. That's the major third above G. The major third, they're always thirds. Isn't that interesting? So, I want to point out also that you've got different types of motions. You've got parallel motions. The right hand goes down, the left hand goes down. The right hand goes up, the left hand goes up. Or, it doesn't matter, but they follow in the same direction. Or, contrary motion. So we have that, or what was it? I forget what it was. Now that's same thing. Let's see what we can do. Now see, that goes in opposite. Isn't that a little bit more attractive than? But maybe not. Maybe not. You know, here's another thing about that. Now then, we could make a chord out of this chromatic tone leading into the D. Oh, it worked. That was not planned. That was just simply, I thought maybe this can be worked out into a chord rather than just a single note as a chromatic tone leading into D. Let's do that once more. That's exciting. Let's see if this will work now. Now we've got the major third. We've got A, now A flat is, yeah, we've got it. There's your tritone. Now from here, and this is the dominant, the minor seventh, major third, then we have to get into C major. That'd be down, well, it's not what we have, it's a C major chord. That's a possibility, if you can handle it. My word. I love this. I'm employing this this principle, let's say, contrasting motion, either this way or this way, or parallel motions. That's really quite nice. Now, the other thing you can do, now that needs to be worked. You don't do that for 1 or 2 minutes and say, oh, I understand that, and that's it. You will forget it, and it won't be it. You know, it's sort of like learning a foreign language, because music is a language. You're working on a foreign language, and you'll find out that certain words go together, and you say, oh, I understand that. But that's meaningless. That has to be part of your vocabulary that you use. Unless you're in the country, of course, it's difficult to use it and use it and use it daily. Therefore, it's best to go to the country that you're intending to learn the foreign language. Go to that country. But if not, you've got to use it with somebody, with an instructor or with a friend. And the same thing with music. If you can find somebody to work with, like a singer or a bass player or a guitarist and so on, so that you can use these principles, I don't think you will all by yourself as much as you would if you had somebody to work with. And many decades ago, that's exactly what I did. I was teaching at the Punahou School in Hawaii, and a couple of Navy guys came to me. They were friends, and they wanted to take theory lessons from me. So we signed them up, put them in one of my theory classes, and I had 3 theory classes going at that time with about 20 some odd students per theory class. Some of them were all guitarists, some of them were all pianists, and some of them were sort of a combination. So at the end, when we finished up the course, they came to me and said, well, now that we're finished the theory, why don't we play together? Well, how nice. You know, I hadn't even thought about it. It's just a theory to me, not actually using it. But why on earth, why not? I says, well, what instruments do you have? They didn't have any instruments. They just did this sort of at the piano or at their desks. So we went to the music store, and one of them wanted to play bass, one of them wanted to play guitar. So I taught them bass, and I taught them guitar, some of the principles. I know a little bit about guitar. I've never really played guitar, but the guitarist at Punahou School asked me to devise a theory course for his guitarists. And I said, I don't own a guitar. He says, come on down to the shop where they make ukuleles, kamaka. And I went down there, and I spent a couple of months making my own guitar. And then I studied and working out a theory for them. So that's all how that started. And then we started practicing. We started getting songs together. And pretty soon we got in touch with an agent, the Pacific Entertainment Corporation there in Hawaii. I'm now in Oregon. And all of a sudden we had a job. And we got some good comments from the people who hired us. So we got another job, and so on and so forth. And I worked, all the different venues in Hawaii, military clubs in Waikiki. We were kept quite busy. And yet, it wasn't jazz. It was what they called at that time disco and popular. Jazz is a very high-level area of musical communication. And unless you can do some of these principles here, and unless you've done the principles that I explained to you in the Bach video, jazz will never happen, because you have no idea what you're doing. You're trying to get some very fancy chords, but unless you have an incredibly good memory, incredibly good ear, it doesn't happen. With some people it does, but they're 1 in a million. So if you want to do something interesting, follow these and work with them and work with them consistently. Okay, going ahead with this. You can change a piece that's in 3/4 time, a song that's in 3/4 time, change it to 4/4 time. So 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and that's the basic rhythm in 3/4 time. Now 1, 2, and 3. Your N and 3 comes after the 2. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2. So on. In 4/4 time, your ands come after 3. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so on. I'm just fiddling around here. By the way, that's how I started improvising. Fiddling around, doing anything, but exploring. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. So, remember we did this? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and do. I'm off. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and... See, that's parallel motion. Do you see what I'm doing here? This is strictly improvisation. I don't have any of this planned, except, yes, I've got, 6, 2, 5, 1, obviously. I've got that planned off. I'm just using that. I'm using the song to do this improvisation with. This is what you've got to work with. You've got to think about what was in the Bach, learning the language of music through the Bach prelude, and just keep doing that. Get the idea of that. And, it starts, remember that measure 21, and then you've got this. Work with that. Improvising means changing and understanding what it is. There's your 4. Now this is your tritone with the missing root. Put it in if you want to. And then go to the G with your minor 13th. There's your minor 7th. There's your minor 9th. And then into... and so on and so forth. Okay, the Bach is vital for you to keep working with regularly. Go through all these videos regularly and choose any one. Just, you don't have to do it one after another. Even these videos here, you don't have to do it one after another. But for the first time, it might be a good idea to go because I do things sort of from simple to a little bit more colorful, let's put it that way. Unless you're willing to work at these things, and unless you are enjoying these things, I don't think this is going to work for you. In school sometimes, school is a matter of learning things, passing your grades, getting your degree, and that's it. Now you go to work. And maybe your work, what you're doing in your work, you'll be using the same things that you learned in school, or maybe not. Maybe you use a little bit of it, maybe not all of it. But it's just whatever you're doing, you've got to use it. I remember I took algebra in school. Well, I didn't use algebra after I graduated. That was in, high school. I didn't use algebra after high school because I went into music. But somewhere along the way, I got a bank account. And I wanted to keep track of my expenditures and my income. And all of a sudden I found out that using a program on the computer would keep track of everything for me by formula. And the formulas had a lot to do with algebra. So pretty soon I was using algebra quite frequently because of the formulas involved in working out these automatic programs that kept track of my income and outgo. Use is everything. If you don't use something, if you don't get out and exercise, you're going to lose something, physically. If you don't use your mind in being creative, you're going to lose some of that creative thing. Just taking something at 5, 1. Now 5, major third, minor 7, with no root. Or, now I could do this. Now that's the opposite of this being the major third of G in the minor 7th. Now this is the major third and that's the minor 7th. Experimenting and understanding the tritone and its major third and minor 7th, which can be inverted, will do a lot for you. But just simply this matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Take bass alone and go through and learn the whole piece by bass. It's easy because it's all key circle. A, D, G, C. Then you take come up an augmented fourth because you take that diagonal across the key circle, which, by the way, is in that other Bach video, learning the matter of music, learning the fundamentals of music. Then E, A, D, G, C, A, D, G, C. That's it. Then you go to E. There's your minor 13th. And then chromatic, opposite. Parallel. Contrasting. I think you should be getting the idea now, and I think you should just absolutely love doing this. It's a thinking man's game, as opposed to the old method of memorize and practice, and that's all you do. Memorize the notes, memorize the notes, memorize the notes. And you have no idea what the progression is. Many people, I'm not talking about you particularly who are listening to this, but maybe you did, and I did. That's exactly what I did. I got my degree, my college degree, memorize and practice 6 hours a day. All right, I think this is just so exciting, and I hope you do too. Please follow me and give me some comments. Are you enjoying this? Are you having any trouble with it? Is this the correct gradient for you? Is it something you've seen before or haven't seen before? All these comments will be greatly appreciated. So this is this series. Now take your Bach and go through and review everything there. Then come back to this and do this and then do them. And then put those away and just sit down and play. Now you're only doing just the Bach, and you're doing this, and that's it. Now pretty soon the next video will be on I think it's going to be fun. This is pretty. I want the next video to be a fun video. We'll work on that for you and be expecting that and looking for it. And I always will appreciate comments and you're following me and giving me some idea of what's happening in your life. That's all for now. Bye-bye.